Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Teacher Transition Series. Today, we are joined by Rebecca Stump. She is a former educator turned account executive and content marketer. We speak a little truth and a lot of tips on how to make your teacher transition a reality. So tune in, turn it up, and let's get ready to do this. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Leena Marie Saleh, the Edtech Guru. I want to thank you so much for spending time with me on this journey, for all the support that you give me, and for following along. Don't forget to hit the thumbs up button, subscribe, and let's get ready to do this. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode. Today, we are joined by Rebecca Stump. Rebecca, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm very excited to be here.
Me too. Very excited to have you on. Rebecca is a former teacher and she's going to share her story. So, Rebecca, do you want to tell a little bit about yourself and kind of how you got to where you are today?
Sure. So I live in Philadelphia and I have always wanted to be a teacher. I went to college, undergrad for education, and then I was an English teacher for 10 years out in the suburbs. And I loved a lot of it, but needed a change. So I transitioned actually in June. So I'm fairly new to that process. It took me about a year to transition. And now I do account management and freelance marketing.
I love that story. And I'm really happy to hear that you just recently made the transition, which is really why I wanted you on today to kind of share the most recent stories. So it took you a year to kind of make the transition. So what made you want to leave the classroom?
So I had all of those things that have been echoed now time and time and time again about being overworked and underpaid and having people in power who aren't teachers making decisions. Like all of those external factors played a part. But for me personally, I had created a curriculum, a full curriculum that became board approved for LA. And then I did the exact same thing for a social studies curriculum. Then I got my master's, then I got my administrative certification. And I feel like I was getting bored. Like I had climbed as many ladders. There aren't really many in education, but I climbed them. And then I was sitting in my classroom doing the same thing every day. And when you try to innovate, at least in some school districts, there's a lot of red tape. So, I had my curriculum and I was teaching it. And I just felt like I had reached the top and I'm only 30. So I was like, I need a change. I want to continue to grow professionally. And I just wasn't finding that in the classroom.
I think that's very relatable. I felt the same way. Obviously, I had, people pushing you down, but the innovation piece and just like not being able to like create for me was like the really toughest part. And I was sitting there, same thing with you, got my master's in administration and I was like doing a little bit of it. And I was like, man, this is all I can do. Like there is only this, like either, or I go and I then work at the district and then what? I do this until I retire. So I really too was also seeking something that was like more challenging or totally relate with that 100%. So with the transitions, that's always the thing about people want to know, how did you do it? How did you make it happen? So I'd love to hear a little bit from you about how you made the steps and what your process looked like.
Sure. So in the beginning, it was one giant failure. I had my resume and I thought it was super good. And I applied to, without exaggeration, probably 100, 150 different jobs that I felt I was very qualified for. You've heard the story already, but I didn't get any interview, not one. And so I had a really discouraging 3 months, 4 months where I just felt like the world wasn't seeing me for what I was worth. And then I remembered that quote that it's like, if you keep repeating the same thing over and over, that's the definition of insanity, right? So you have to change it. So I went to my friends who work in the corporate world and they said, you have to get on LinkedIn. So my journey was very much LinkedIn focused. After I talked to them, I got on LinkedIn and I began a networking journey. I had never had to do that for being a teacher before, so it was very new, but I just reached out to as many people as I possibly could. I think in the beginning of my journey, I thought I could do it all. Like I was hearing these jobs from corporate America and I was like, I can do that. I can do that. I can do that. And every single person I talked to was like, okay, but that's not a good answer. When I ask you, what do you want to be? What do you want to do? And you say everything, that means that you have no idea what you want to do. So that was my first piece of advice for us. Oh, okay. And so I just began talking to all of those people in jobs that quote, like I wanted to do. And I found out through tons of conversations, hours of conversations, that I actually didn't want to do those things that I thought I wanted to do. Um, so through I had months of networking, and I had coffee chats with truly anyone who was willing to listen. I finally figured out exactly what I did want to begin pursuing. And I would say that that's when my journey really began. So the rest of it was all exploratory, and my head was kind of spinning. And it was when I finally said, this is what I'm interested in, that I really was able to achieve.
I think that's a very good perspective, because when I talk to a lot of teacher transitioners, and I've probably spoken to like hundreds upon hundreds now at this point, a lot of them come to me and they're like, well, I don't know what I want to do. And I'm like, it's very difficult for me to help you navigate, or anybody to help you navigate what you want to do when you don't know what you want to do. And just like you, I had the same experience. I was applying to like hundreds and hundreds. I think I almost applied for probably like 300 jobs, like just like whatever. And I didn't know what I wanted to do. And my husband, he works in consulting, and he like has all like big brands and strategic marketing, just all kinds of stuff. And he was like, well, it doesn't sound like you even know. And I'm like, but I don't, like, I don't know what to do. And he was like, okay. And then I was just sitting there reflecting. I was like, you know what would I tell a student who like wanted to do something? Like I would tell them to like make a list of things that you like, things that you don't. And so I just kind of did that same sort of process to start navigating. And like you, I also, I was running a meetup event at the time. So I got the chance to talk to different staged founders in the process, and be able to kind of understand what they needed in a job. And we did like a student startup crawl where we visited local Austin companies to see what they did in their companies. And so as they were talking, these people, we're really there to showcase what students could do. And I'm sitting there like, oh my gosh. Because I was still in the classroom, I was like, oh, I could do that. Oh, yes, this is the direction I wanted to go. So that kind of helped me too. So I think exactly what you're saying is important for people to understand, that like, it's okay that you don't know, but it sounds like where you had success was after meeting with people and having coffee chats and kind of understanding what people did in a day to day, that kind of drove you into a specific direction.
It definitely did. And I want to make an important point that I do think that teachers are equipped with a lot of skills just based off of our experience in the classroom to succeed in many different things. So I'm not here to say that educators, cannot do all of those things that you think you want to do, but from all of the people that I talked to, it was so important to try to identify that one so that you can then build out your smaller goals in order to get to your end goal. So teachers are very capable, and we have that based on our experience, but it is important to discover what you want to do.
Yeah, very good distinction. So now you are doing content marketing. And I know that we had formerly talked to Daniela Latham, and she does product marketing. But maybe you could share a little bit about, I've been sharing a lot with teachers about the importance of like content marketing, and how if you want to do instructional design, content marketing might actually be a really good pathway for you to seek. And a lot of companies need that. Like it's a very highly needed thing that is sought after. So maybe you could tell people a little bit about content marketing, what exactly that is.
Sure. So first, I do want to say, I think teachers, it's a really easy path into content marketing because you are constantly communicating with a variety of different people on a daily basis. And that's in a gist what content marketing is. So you have all of these different types of people that you're trying to write. I'm mainly a copywriter, so I write long form and short form copy, and you're trying to reach different audiences. So long form copy can be blog posts, then you can do email blasts, and you can be the one writing those. You can do social media content, newsletters, website copy. So there's a really big area of need for people who understand how to sell and pitch products, and teachers do that every day, right? You have a subject, there's kids who may not want to learn your subject, and you have to find creative ways to get to them. And so I think when I got into this, I didn't even know copywriting was a thing. The first time I heard it, I thought someone was talking about checking for plagiarism.
Me too.
30 years old.
Same.
And I was like,
yeah,
you do what? That sounds horrible. Like that's a
yeah,
terrible job.
Yep.
But yeah, so there's a huge need for people who are able to communicate. And I think that teaching allows you to, have strengthened that skill over the time. So yeah, that's what I do.
And you are also doing a lot of like freelance work. Maybe you could share a little bit about that pathway. And I know that you were doing a little bit of freelance when you were actually transitioning. So maybe share a little bit about what freelancing looks like and kind of how you're handling and managing that.
Absolutely. So I think freelancing is a great way to get your foot in the door because it proves that you can do what you're claiming you can do. And I would say that actually for all of the different career paths you want to go into, you need proof that you can do it. So if you want to go into ID, you have to have a portfolio proving that you can do what you say you can do. And as far as content marketing goes, I proved it through my LinkedIn profile. So I put out consistent posts day after day. Some no one liked, other times quite a few people liked. And I just, I kept at it and I tried different ways to get my message across to see which ones stuck. And all of the freelancing jobs that I have had since I began my transition were all from people reaching out and saying, "Hey, I've seen your posts on LinkedIn. Do you do freelance work?" And the first few times I said no, because I didn't. And then I sat back and I said, why don't I do that? Why can't I do that? So I began taking on different clients if what their product was, if it was something that interests me. And so yeah, so I got them all just through consistent posting on LinkedIn. I also worked with one of my very first things. Devlin Peck is huge in the instructional design world. And I read a blog of his and then I made it into a slide deck. So I just like took that information and recreated it, tagged him in it. And so that was like, hey, I can take info and I can make it into something visually appealing. Proof, right? Then I was working in this group called Preceptor Connector, and they were like, okay, we need to do onboarding copy. So I did that and then I posted it on LinkedIn to just show constantly, like, I can do it and here's proof. I can do it and here's proof. And so the people came to me.
And a lot of times people are like, well, I can't post on LinkedIn. I don't know what to do. And I always say this. I had somebody who was looking to go into customer success and she was like, yeah, I did all these like she was just talking to me about like her day-to-day things about how she was doing trainings and how she's like doing all these things. And I was like, okay, she's like, well, I'm going to have to like recreate things. And I'm like, no, you don't actually. You
Right.
actually have all this stuff that you've created. And what was unique over the pandemic is that that's the first time that some majority of teachers were taking what they were doing on a day to day and actually flipping it into like written content
Yeah.
rather than just verbal content. And so you actually do have a very big portfolio of things that you do on a day to day basis that actually you could turn it into a post. And if you don't want to post every single day, post once a week or
Right.
comment on what somebody is saying. But it's really important to be seen. The teacher shortage is at an all-time high and teachers transitioning is at an all-time high. When I first left 4 years ago, there wasn't as many people doing this. And, it was almost like, oh, you're leaving, that sort of thing, where now it's like celebrate. It's like, how did you do it? So it's an interesting process, but you have to stand out in some way. And you said something also that I want to note. Not only were you posting something regularly and consistently, but you're also part of a couple of groups in which you were taking different things that people were basically suggesting in these groups and kind of doing. So I think there's a certain amount of hustle that's involved with the process of transitioning. And I like that you said that you were in these like two different groups and doing those sorts of things. I think that's also how Stella, who's recently made the transition to customer success, that's also how she did it, was joining these like CS Insider and different groups like that. So what benefit do you feel like you've learned from also being in those like networking type of groups?
I owe everything, all of my success to this point because of those groups that I joined. So the very first person who gave me a bone was, her name's Annalise Pixton, and she is like huge in just the ed tech sphere. And I sent her a message and I said, hi, I'm new to this whole LinkedIn experience and I really want to, be successful. And she said, all right, you need to get on Volley, which is a group that she had. And she said, we can meet there. And so I got on Volley. And then I explained to her who I was. And I said, I just made a portfolio. Can you look at it? She looked at my portfolio, gave me a litany of things that I could improve on. And then I went and improved on them. And she said, that makes you stand out. That alone makes you stand out because you were willing to put in the work to get better. And she was like, let's have a one-on-one meeting. And it's because of that extra effort, that standing out, like you said, that I was able to get connected with her. And then she became a mentor of mine throughout these past few months. I ended up creating visual content for her to go along with some of her posts, which is how I got involved with a man named Mike Yates, also huge in the edtech world. And it was because of those posts that Mike Yates noticed me. And then Mike Yates asked me to join him in this office hours exit community where we try to help teachers transition. And it was because of my connection with Mike Yates that I met a man named JW Marshall, and he is in ed tech, and he was talking to me about potentially freelancing. So the reason I take you through that string is that like you have to be willing to put yourself out there, because if I hadn't from the very beginning and then continually put myself out there, I wouldn't be where I am. So I think it's really important to find those groups, but then 80, 90, these are made up statistics, aren't going to do anything in those groups. They're just there to listen. And if you're willing to take that step, and it is scary, but put yourself in that position, it goes a long way.
I agree. And with an AP is great. Mike Yates is great. Obviously, JW and I do a podcast, so I know JW. What's interesting, I guess, about what you said about AP is that you did what she asked you to do. So I think that is that's huge. So a lot of people will meet with me for coffee chats, and I'll send them, I have all this information that I've gathered and compiled over time, and I'll send it to them. And then I'll see like on LinkedIn, just, 3-4 months later, they haven't made any adjustments. They haven't made any change. And then they reach back out to me and like, hey, can I help? And it's like, I mean this in a nice way, but I don't have time if you don't make the investment. You have to make the investment and show us that you have an investment, or why would we invest this extra time when there's hundreds of people sitting in our inboxes on a regular basis wanting help? So I think that's really good feedback that she gave you, and being able to connect with that. So on the note of Mike Yates, you guys have been doing this new Friday event. So maybe share a little bit about that.
Sure. So I think there were a lot of people. This is his explanation. There's a ton of people on LinkedIn that are trying to help teachers. And he wanted to make a consolidated effort. So get those people together who are there day after day trying to help, and get us in a room where those teachers who are new to the transition process can come in and ask their questions. Because I know for me, I had thousands of questions when I exited the classroom. I was wide eyed and unaware, and I needed help. And he spearheaded this way to create a group where you can come and it's safe and you can ask those questions no matter how rudimentary or complex they are, and have people who have been through the process there to help you. So he's in there, AP's in there, and both of them are what I would like to call like the big dogs. Like they have done it, and they've transitioned a while ago and are now very successful. But then he also invited me on, and this other man on as well, just to kind of be like the new voices, because we both recently transitioned. And so you have the range. And I think the answers reflect that, because you have the words of the wise, but then you also have those from the newly experienced. So it's a really cool group. You should definitely check it out. We post every single week with a new link to the event.
And I'll make sure that we link that. And also any of the things that have been talked about in today's interview will always be in the episode notes below. Okay. So we've talked a lot about the steps that you took and how you made the transition and all of those types of things. Any lasting tips or tricks that you would give for a teacher who is looking to make the transition?
I think my number one, well, I probably have a few. So my first tip would be, don't just jump into ID and customer success, because although they are phenomenal fields, both of which I thought I wanted to do in the beginning, they are flooded right now with educators trying to transition in. And so what I would say is, currently I work as an account manager, and that term account manager is the exact same thing as a customer success agent. And the account manager and a customer success are very similar to a project manager. And so my first recommendation would be like, don't just drill yourself down into those two camps, because there's a whole world out there of different jobs, different job titles, different responsibilities. And I would suggest to not limit yourself to those two. With that being said, if you think, but I really do want to do ID, then you reach out to at least 3 people and have those conversations with them and say, what does your day-to-day look like? I found out that in ID, you don't really talk to very many people. You connect in the beginning to have that meeting, that launch off point, but then you build out the project on your own. I'm a highly social person. I would say most educators are highly social people. So you're taking yourself from a constant, everyday talking 7 hours a day to almost no interaction. I didn't like that very much. And I would never have known that if I didn't interview. So those are my two tips. One, make sure to keep all of your horizons open. Don't just limit yourself to ed tech. The world needs teachers. It turns out all corporations could use our skill sets. So keep, your eyes wide as you're looking. And then once you do say, this is what I want to do, make sure you want to do it by asking many different people, because one person's day to day may not be the same.
Yeah. And the job titles and roles change from company to company.
They
Like
do.
they're never exactly consistent. So like an account manager could be really a sales rep is really what they're doing. They're going out, they're hustling. They might be cold calling. They might be doing different things. So it is important for you to definitely do those interviews. And I think what you said about ID, you hit the nail on the head. I was just talking to someone the other day about customer success and they said, oh, well, maybe I should do ID. And I'm like, you don't know how competitive that those two fields actually have become because they are natural transitions for teachers. But exactly what you said, I said, don't limit yourself to sales. Think about marketing. Those are really great things. And marketing is really large right now and can be quite lucrative. Not that the others can't, but those are usually a nice way to like transition into. And then about ID, I think exactly what you said. Most of my friends who are in ID, my job is not specifically like ID, like I develop content and things like that, but I'm collaborating with other people. Is really you get the brief
Mhm.
of what the project brief of what they're wanting you to do. And then you go and you create it. And then you don't actually deliver it back to them. That's like a implementation specialist or somebody else. So you're actually just, it's kind of like if you were to go to, I don't know, your school district was like, hey, write this curriculum, but by yourself. And then you come back and you never actually taught your curriculum that you were delivering. That's just something to keep in mind. So it is siloed. If you enjoy that, obviously, then that's amazing for you to do. But it is important for you to understand that there are other pathways. And I think Rebecca, out of everything that you have said today, is that you need to do interviews with people.
You really do.
Because you don't know. And I've mentioned that to many people who are like, oh, I'm in ID. And a lot of people end up being very unhappy actually in ID
Yep.
because it is so siloed. And especially if you go corporate, it can be even more siloed than anything else. And so like I've had people have transitioned to insurance companies and they are, or healthcare companies because ID is really needed in all of those, even gas. I mean, everyone needs ID, even if it's just not education, but a lot of times I've spoken to people who have made the transition and they're just like, it's not what I thought it was. And that's because you didn't do homework. And so it's just really important to do that piece, I think.
And another thing that I learned that just not doesn't really fit into any of the questions, but is the difference between a startup and a hardcore company that's been around for a while. So I have worked with both, and I think it's really important for teachers to be aware that startups feel like the classroom. And we've had that feeling where it's like you need a worksheet made, you make it, you print it, you get it out to the students, and then you move on. And it's very, very fast paced in the classroom. You're constantly making decisions. And that's how a startup company runs. Like I've done some marketing for startups, and it's maybe 2 eyes or 3 eyes on whatever you're creating, and then it's out the door. Whereas I've also worked in corporate America where there's 9 or 10 different teams of people who have to have eyes on your product before you send it out. And so I would caution educators that it's a very different world. It's much calmer, but it's also much more, it's slow moving. And that was a huge, not a drawback, but just a lesson learned for me was that the world works a little bit slower than you are anticipating. And even if you have ideas or changes that you want to make, there's much more of a line of command that you have to follow. So that's something I wish I had known before that I had to learn along the way. So just
I'm actually really happy that you said that because that's also been like a huge learning curve for me, myself. I mean, in teaching, you're making all these decisions. There's not really like a lot of people really for the most part checking what you're doing, and then I went to a startup, an early stage startup. There's like 13 people in the company, like whatever. And then now I'm at Canva and I love being at Canva. So I'm not saying that anything, but it's just much slower. There are brand teams, there's a lifecycle team, there's a marketing team. Everybody has a team and that team has a team. So it's just a really slow process. So you have to make sure that you are really intentional and that you understand that it could be very long to like get these projects across the board, or You could work really, really hard on like a sprint and get your project done. And somebody be like,
Yeah.
no. And your project goes out the window and it changes like midstream as you're deep in the project. And you're like, yeah, I've spent all this time and energy. And then, yeah, we changed direction. And so you just have to know that that kind of comes with that. Whereas startups are a little less that they just want to get things through. There was 2 marketing people or 1 marketing person. So, and you can have as much influence really as possible in those where you're going to have less so, and you're going to have to do more networking even within your company.
It's such a good point, and it's something I wish I had been told, that it's neither good nor bad. It's just something that it would have been helpful to hear before I entered that space. So.
Yeah. And I think you taking the approach of doing freelancing is really great, because I think it's also giving you a chance to kind of solidify what you think, what you know, where you want to go next, or maybe you want to stay freelancing, but it's giving you more insight than you would have gotten if you had just went to one company and been done.
And it also allows you to work to that end. It allows you to work with so many different companies where you can say like, oh, that's how it works there. And oh, it's really different than here. And all of that is just helpful information for that next move, where you can say, okay, I liked X, Y, and Z, definitely don't want this component. And so you kind of get to build out your ideal job while still having jobs. It's a really neat sphere that I think a lot of educators should tap into. And additionally, not only that, but I've created beyond videos for companies, and I've created a little bit, I have dabbled in ID and done some storyline and stuff. And it allows you again to look at those and say, don't like that program. So if my job's going to be with that, then I'm going to shy away from it. So it's a huge learning tool. And I think teachers can definitely go down that path and be successful.
I agree. Awesome. You have definitely dropped some knowledge bombs for all of our viewers. So hopefully you guys took something away from our conversation with Rebecca. Rebecca, where is the best place for people to find you?
I am on LinkedIn as Rebecca Stump. And yeah, I'm on there every day, whether I should be or not, but I'm on there every day and I will definitely respond to your message time.
Awesome. Well, we really thank you for taking the time today, and make sure that you are following Rebecca. If you haven't, you'll find that in the show notes below, and we will see you guys all next time. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much. You've made it this far. I appreciate all of your support. Please don't forget to like, share, subscribe, throw the comments below in the comment section. I'm always looking for new ideas and hot trends, or if you're looking to sponsor our podcast and video episodes, reach out to us on any of our social media channels. And you can even find us anywhere you find your podcasts. Once again, my name's Leena Marie Saleh, the Edtech Guru, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye, everybody.